I pulled up to my grandfather's house in an Uber, and the first thing he said to me was, "Where's the brand new SUV I bought you 3 months ago?" I had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. But here's the thing that will blow your mind. That SUV existed. It was real. It was registered in my name. And my own mother had given it to my sister without ever telling me it existed. Want to know how deep this betrayal actually went? Stay with me because what happened next changed everything. Hey everyone, my name is Emily and I'm 24 years old. What I'm about to share with you is the true story of how I discovered my mother had been stealing from me for over a decade, and how I finally got justice. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or like you were always the one making sacrifices, this story is going to resonate with you. Please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and drop a comment telling me if you've ever experienced anything like this. Your support means everything and I read every single comment. Now let me take you back to that October afternoon when my entire world came crashing down. The crisp Nashville air hit my face as I stepped out of the Uber. My grandfather, Richard, stood on the front porch of his beautiful Victorian home, gripping the railing with those weathered hands that had built a construction empire from nothing. He was 78 years old, but in that moment he looked like a general about to go to war. "Why are you arriving in an Uber?" His voice cut through the afternoon silence. "What happened to the SUV we bought you for your 24th birthday?" My stomach dropped. "What SUV?" Before I could process his confusion, my mother, Linda, appeared in the doorway behind him. And there was that smile. That specific smile I'd learned to recognize over 24 years of being her daughter. The one that meant she'd done something she knew was wrong but had already convinced herself was justified. "Jessica needed it more," my mom said casually, like she was discussing the weather. "Your sister just got that new job across town, and with the baby coming she really needed reliable transportation." Everyone froze. Let me tell you something about my life. I work as an assistant manager at a boutique hotel in downtown Nashville, a position I fought tooth and nail to get after graduating from community college 2 years ago. I pay my own rent, my own bills, and I've been building a life completely separate from my family's chaos. But standing there in my grandfather's driveway, I realized that no matter how far you run, some things always catch up to you. "I never received any SUV," I said, my voice growing stronger. "Nobody told me anything about a car." My grandfather's knuckles turned white as his grip tightened on the railing. "Linda, you told me Emily had the car. You told me she loved it. You said she cried when she saw it. You even sent me a picture." "A picture?" "There was a picture." "Wait," I said slowly, pieces clicking into place. "Was that picture taken in front of Jessica's house?" Because Jessica posted a picture with a new black SUV 3 months ago. She said her husband bought it for her. I even liked the post. The silence that followed was deafening. My grandfather's face cycled through emotions I'd rarely seen: confusion, understanding, then something that looked dangerously close to rage. "You gave away a car that I purchased with my own money," he said slowly, each word deliberate. "A car that I put in Emily's name. A car that was meant for her and her alone." "It's family, Daddy," my mother said in that wheedling tone. "We share things in this family. Emily understands that. Right, Emily?" She looked at me then, her eyes pleading for me to play along. To smooth things over like I'd been doing my entire life. To be the good daughter who never complained, who always sacrificed so that Jessica could have everything she wanted. But something had shifted inside me. "No," I said quietly. "I don't understand. I never understood and I'm tired of pretending that I do." My grandfather straightened to his full height, and the look he gave my mother made her take an involuntary step backward. "Everyone inside," he commanded. Yow. Inside my grandfather's house, everything smelled like cedar wood and old books. My grandmother, Helen, emerged from the kitchen with a confused expression, wiping her hands on a dish towel. We gathered in the living room, an awkward assembly of tension and unspoken accusations. I remained standing near the fireplace, my legs unsteady. If I sat down, I worried I might not be able to get back up. "I want to understand something," my grandfather said, settling into his leather armchair. "When I bought that car 3 months ago, I asked you to arrange for Emily to come pick it up. You told me she did. You even sent me a picture of her standing next to it." My heart clenched. That picture was taken in front of Jessica's house, wasn't it? Jessica posted it on social media. Everyone congratulated her. I liked the post thinking her husband had bought it. Let me explain something about my family because without context, none of this makes sense. My mother has always favored Jessica. From the moment my sister was born when I was 4 years old, I became invisible. Jessica was the pretty one, the charming one, the one who could do no wrong. When she struggled in school, tutors were hired. When I struggled, I was told to try harder. When Jessica wanted dance lessons, piano lessons, art lessons, the money appeared. When I wanted to join the school band, I was told we couldn't afford the instrument rental. I learned early to stop asking. I learned to work for everything I wanted. At 16, I got my first job at a grocery store. I saved every penny, bought my own school supplies, my own clothes, my own everything. When Jessica wrecked her first car at 17, my parents bought her another one. When I saved enough for a used Honda at 18, my mother borrowed it for Jessica and returned it with a dented fender and no apology. This pattern continued into adulthood. Jessica got married at 22 in a lavish ceremony my parents funded entirely. I wasn't even asked to be a bridesmaid. When Jessica announced her pregnancy 6 months ago, suddenly every family conversation revolved around the baby. Meanwhile, I worked 50-hour weeks, climbed from front desk clerk to assistant manager through determination, and built a life that asked nothing from anyone. I thought I'd finally escaped. I was wrong. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, my grandmother said sharply. You took a gift intended for Emily and gave it to Jessica, then lied about it? It's not that simple, my mother said desperately. Jessica needed it. Her husband lost his job and they have a baby on the way. Emily has always been so independent. She manages fine on her own. Jessica needs help. That's not the point, my grandfather said, his voice dangerously quiet. I purchased that vehicle for Emily. It was registered in her name. I have the paperwork. How exactly did you manage to give it to Jessica? My mother's face went through several shades of red. I told the dealership there was a mistake with the registration, that it should have been in Jessica's name. I had Emily's information from when she was younger, so I just... You committed fraud, my grandfather said flatly. You forged documents to transfer ownership of property that didn't belong to you. It's family, my mother repeated weakly. We take care of each other. Emily wouldn't have minded if she'd known. I laughed then, a bitter sound that surprised even me. You didn't even tell me the car existed. How could you know whether I would have minded? You didn't give me the chance to be generous. You just took what wasn't yours and gave it away. My grandfather rose from his chair, and for a moment I saw the man who'd built an empire through hard work and harder decisions. Where is the car now? At Jessica's house, my mother whispered. She's been driving it for 3 months. My grandfather pulled out his phone. Then I believe it's time to correct this situation. The next 30 minutes felt surreal. My grandfather made phone calls with calm efficiency, to lawyers, to the police department's non-emergency line, to a towing company that apparently owed him a favor. My mother tried to interrupt several times, but each attempt was met with a raised hand and a look that could freeze water. My grandmother sat beside me on the sofa, her hand finding mine and squeezing gently. I always wondered, she said quietly. There were so many times when things didn't add up. Birthday presents that were never mentioned. Your grandfather would ask about something he'd sent you, and Linda always had an explanation. I felt tears pricking at my eyes. How long has this been happening? Years probably. I should have asked more questions. I should have called you directly. All those years of thinking I was forgotten, thinking my grandparents didn't care as much about me as they did about Jessica. None of it had been real. It had all been carefully orchestrated by my mother. The car will be here within the hour, my grandfather announced. I've also contacted the authorities about the fraudulent transfer. Since I'm willing to resolve this within the family and no financial harm was done to the dealership, we can handle it privately. Thank you, I said, the words feeling inadequate. My grandfather placed his hands on my shoulders. I should have been paying closer attention. I should have verified things myself instead of trusting intermediaries. That's my failure, Emily, and I'm sorry. It's not your fault, I said, glancing at my mother who had shrunk into the corner. You trusted family. This is going to destroy everything, my mother said suddenly. Jessica is pregnant. She's under stress. If you take that car back, it's going to devastate her. Think about the baby. My grandfather's face hardened. The family? Emily is family. She has spent her entire life being treated like an afterthought while you've poured every resource into Jessica. I've seen Emily show up to holidays in worn clothes while Jessica arrives in designer outfits. I told myself it was because Emily was more responsible. Now I understand it was because Emily was given no choice. That's not fair. You gave her no other option, my grandmother interrupted sharply. And now we find out you've been stealing from her for years. Gifts we sent, money we gave. How much of it actually reached her? The question hung in the air. How much? I asked. Over the years, how much was redirected? My mother's face was a mask of guilt. I don't know exactly. What matters, my grandfather said firmly, is that you've committed theft. You've stolen from your own daughter to fund your other daughter's lifestyle. And you've lied to us for years. The sound of a truck pulling into the driveway cut through the tension. A flatbed tow truck was backing up with a familiar black SUV strapped to its bed. That's my car, I said, the words feeling strange. That's actually my car. Yes, my grandfather said. It is, and it always was. My mother stood up. Jessica is going to be furious. She's going to think I betrayed her. You did betray her, my grandfather said calmly. You set her up to believe she was entitled to things that weren't hers. If she's upset, that's a consequence of the situation you created. I walked to the window and watched as the tow truck driver unloaded my SUV. It was beautiful, a gleaming symbol of truth finally coming to light. And somewhere across town, my sister was about to discover that the life she'd built on stolen foundations was about to come crashing down. The SUV sat in my grandfather's driveway like a monument to everything that had been taken from me. Behind me, my mother had retreated to the kitchen with my grandmother, their voices a low murmur. My grandfather joined me at the window. How are you holding up? I'm not sure, I admitted. Part of me wants to scream and part of me feels numb. I want to ask you something, he said seriously. Is this the first time something like this has happened, or is there more? The question cracked something open inside me. For years I'd minimized the constant small thefts, the redirected gifts, the broken promises. It's not the first time, I whispered. Tell me. So I did. I told him about the laptop that was supposed to be my high school graduation gift but ended up in Jessica's room within a month. About the college fund my grandmother had mentioned contributing to, money I'd never seen. About the jewelry from my great-grandmother that was supposed to be divided equally but somehow all ended up with Jessica. I told him about the smaller things too. Birthday checks that were cashed but never given to me. Christmas presents that disappeared. The savings bond from my christening that my mother cashed when I was 16, claiming the money went to emergency car repairs on a vehicle I was never allowed to drive. The worst part, I said, my voice cracking, is that I actually believed I was the problem. I thought there was something wrong with me, that I wasn't worthy of the same love Jessica got. My grandfather's jaw tightened. How much money are we talking about? I'd never calculated it before, but now I did the math. Probably between $40,000 and $50,000, maybe more. He was quiet for a long moment. I want you to know that this ends today. Whatever happened in the past can't be undone, but going forward, anything I give you will go directly to you. No intermediaries. Before I could respond, the sound of a car screeching into the driveway made us both turn. A silver sedan pulled up behind the tow truck, brakes squealing. The door flew open and Jessica emerged, her pregnant belly visible beneath her designer maternity dress. What the hell is going on? She screamed, storming toward the SUV. Why is my car at your house? My grandfather opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. This car has never been yours. It was purchased for Emily. Your mother gave it to you without authorization, and now it's being returned to its rightful owner. Jessica's face contorted with rage. That's insane. Mom told me you and Grandma wanted me to have it. She said Emily didn't need a car because she lives near work and takes the bus. Your mother lied, my grandfather said simply, as she has apparently been lying for years. My mother appeared in the doorway. Jessica, honey, let me explain. Explain what? Jessica shrieked. That you're letting them take my car after everything you promised? It was a gift, my mother said desperately. Just not originally meant for you. But you needed it so much more than Emily did. I stepped onto the porch. Did it ever occur to you to ask me? To tell me about the car and see if I would be willing to share it? Did it occur to anyone that I might have my own needs? Jessica's eyes fixed on me with venom. Oh please Emily. You've always been so self-righteous. Little Miss Perfect who never needs anything. You think you're better than us because you work your fancy hotel job and live alone. I live that way because I was given no other choice, I said steadily. I was never given the support you were given. My grandfather gestured sharply. Inside all of you. This is a family matter. Jessica looked ready to argue, but something in his tone stopped her. She waddled up the steps with exaggerated difficulty, one hand pressed to her lower back. We reconvened in the living room, tension thick enough to cut. My grandmother emerged from the kitchen, her face showing disappointment I'd never seen before, directed not at me but at my mother and sister. Before we continue, my grandfather said, I want to establish facts. Linda, how long have you been redirecting gifts and money intended for Emily to Jessica instead? My mother's mouth opened and closed. It's not as simple as that. I was managing resources for the whole family. That's not an answer, my grandmother said sharply. How long? The silence stretched. Finally, my mother dropped her gaze. Since the girls were teenagers, maybe earlier. And approximately how much money are we talking about? I don't know. I didn't keep track. Emily estimates between $40,000 and $50,000, my grandfather said coldly. Does that sound accurate? My mother flinched. That's probably high. Let's see, my grandmother said, pulling out her phone. I have records of contributions I made over the years. College fund contributions, graduation gifts, birthday money. Shall I read the totals? Mother, please. $17,000 sent for Emily's college fund over 6 years. Where is that money, Linda? It went toward family expenses. Times were hard enough that you bought Jessica a new bedroom set when she was 16 and took her to Europe for her graduation trip? The question landed like a physical blow. I remember that trip, I said quietly. I wasn't invited. Mom said it was because I had to work at my summer job. But the real reason was that money was supposed to be mine. Jessica rolled her eyes. Oh, here we go. Poor Emily, always the victim. I didn't know there was anything to speak up about, I said. Mom told me your godparents paid for that trip. She said my godparents hadn't been as generous. Was it? My grandmother asked. Because I recall Emily's godparents contributed quite nicely to her education fund, the same fund that got spent on family expenses while Jessica was touring Paris. The layers of deception were staggering. Every explanation I'd ever been given was falling apart. Mom, why? I asked. What did I ever do to make you treat me this way? My mother's face crumpled. I didn't treat you badly. I loved you both equally. I just recognized that Jessica needed more support. You were always so capable, Emily. Jessica struggled more. She struggled because you never let her face consequences, I said. Every time she made a mistake, you covered for her. You didn't help her, you crippled her. Jessica's face flushed. Don't talk about me like I'm some charity case. You're 20 years old, pregnant, with a husband who can't hold a job, living in a house your mother-in-law owns, driving a car stolen from your sister, I said calmly. How would you describe that? At least I have a family. What do you have? A studio apartment and a job folding towels. I manage a hotel, I corrected. A job I earn through hard work. A job that pays me well enough to support myself without stealing from family. Enough, my grandfather said. Jessica, did you know the car was intended for Emily? Jessica hesitated. I suspected. Mom said there was some confusion about who it was supposed to be for, but that she'd worked it out. And you didn't question that? I didn't think about Emily. I was excited. It was a nice car and I needed it. My grandfather shook his head. The entitlement in this room is astounding. Linda, you've raised one daughter to believe she deserves nothing and another to believe she deserves everything. My mother began to cry, but I felt nothing. She was crying for herself, not for what she'd done to me. What happens now? I asked. My grandfather exchanged a look with my grandmother. Now we start making things right. For the next hour, my grandfather catalogued the wrongs with the precision of an accountant. He pulled out a notepad and started recording answers. The college fund contributions, he said. We'll start there. Helen and I contributed $17,000 for Emily's education. Where is that money? It was used for family expenses, my mother said weakly. Then you owe Emily $17,000. We'll set up a payment plan. What? I can't pay back $17,000. You'll find a way, just as Emily found a way to pay for her own education without help. How much did you spend on your degree, Emily? About $8,000 total. Community college while working full-time. He wrote another note. Now let's discuss the other gifts. For 30 minutes we went through every birthday, every holiday, every milestone. By the time we finished, the tally was staggering. Approximately $53,000 in gifts and contributions intended for me had been redirected elsewhere. I had no idea, my grandmother said, her voice trembling. We thought we were helping both of you equally. Here is what's going to happen, my grandfather said firmly. The car has been returned. The money stolen cannot all be repaid immediately, but it will be acknowledged. I will be restructuring my estate plans this week. The changes will reflect reality, not fiction. Jessica's head snapped up. What does that mean? It means the inheritance you've been counting on may look very different than expected. Hannah will receive appropriate consideration for what has been taken from her. You can't punish Jessica for things I did, my mother protested. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm correcting an imbalance. Jessica, you've been set up to fail. Your mother gave you everything without teaching you how to work for it. That changes today. This is insane, Jessica said. I haven't done anything wrong. You knew something wasn't right, I said quietly. You admitted you suspected the car wasn't meant for you, but you didn't ask questions because you didn't want to know the answers. That's a choice, and choices have consequences. Jessica turned to me with tears streaming. I'm your sister. I'm having a baby. Doesn't that mean anything? It means a lot, I said. And when that baby is born, I'll be the best aunt I can be. But that doesn't mean I'll let you continue to take from me. What do you want, Emily? My mother asked, defeated. I considered carefully. I want acknowledgement. I want you to admit what you did, not just to me but to everyone. I want boundaries, real boundaries. If I choose to help Jessica in the future, it will be my choice. That's fair, my grandfather said. I looked at my grandmother. And I want a relationship with you both. A real one, not filtered through Mom. My grandmother pulled me into a tight embrace. You've always had that, sweetheart. We just didn't realize it was being kept from you. Outside the window, my SUV gleamed in the afternoon sun. It was just a car, really. But it represented so much more, the truth finally being told. 3 months passed and my life transformed in ways I never predicted. The educational fund my grandparents established allowed me to enroll in an online bachelor's program in hospitality management. The SUV made everything easier and opened opportunities that had been closed before. My relationship with my mother and Jessica remained fractured. After weeks of unanswered messages, they largely stopped reaching out. But I was okay with that. I was building a life with support rather than despite opposition. The baby arrived in March, a healthy girl named Stella. I found out through social media rather than a phone call, which hurt. But I sent a gift anyway. A beautiful handmade blanket and a note that made clear my door was open, but only on terms of mutual respect. Work continued to be my sanctuary. The hotel promoted me to night manager with a significant raise. My general manager told me I handled difficult situations better than anyone she'd worked with. You never let personal issues affect your work, she said. That's rare. I thanked her, not mentioning that my ability to remain calm under pressure had been honed through years of managing family crises that were never my fault. In May, I received an unexpected email from Jessica. I'd like to talk, she wrote. Not to ask for anything, just to talk. I think I owe you an apology. We met at a cafe. Jessica looked exhausted but different, somehow more grounded. I want to acknowledge what happened, she began. Not just with the car but with everything. I've been doing a lot of thinking since the baby was born. Mom always told me I deserved special treatment because I was more fragile. I believed her because it was easier than questioning what I was getting. Her eyes filled with tears. Now I have a daughter and I think about what I'd want for her. I wouldn't want her to be like me, dependent on other people's sacrifices. I'd want her to be like you, capable and self-sufficient. The reconciliation was slow and careful, built on conversations rather than assumptions. Jessica began therapy to work through her entitlement. I supported her efforts without enabling old patterns. 6 months after the confrontation, my mother requested a family meeting. She wanted to apologize, she said. She wanted to make amends. We gathered in my grandparents' living room again. My mother stood in the center, looking older and more fragile. "I've done a lot of thinking," she began. "And I've realized I hurt you, Emily. Not just once but repeatedly over many years. I told myself I was helping Jessica, but really I was projecting my own insecurities. I saw myself in Jessica's struggles, and I saw everything I wished I could be in your independence. Instead of celebrating you, I punished you for being capable." "Why are you saying this now?" I asked. "Because I almost lost everything. My relationship with both my daughters, my parents' trust, my self-respect. I've started seeing a therapist. I'm working on understanding why I did what I did." She approached me slowly. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I haven't earned that yet. But I'm asking for a chance to earn it." I looked at my mother and saw the fear beneath the regret. "Okay," I said quietly. "One chance." The months that followed weren't easy. There were setbacks and difficult conversations. But slowly something new began to grow from the ashes. My mother followed through. She attended therapy, made amends, and stopped making excuses. When Jessica needed help, my mother offered support from her own resources rather than redirecting from me. A year after the SUV confrontation, I graduated from my bachelor's program with honors. My grandparents, my parents, and Jessica with Stella all attended the celebration. As I stood in my grandfather's living room, diploma in hand, I allowed myself to feel proud, not just of the degree but of the journey that led me here. Driving home that evening in my SUV, I thought about everything that had changed. I'd gone from being invisible to being seen, from being robbed to being supported, from being alone to being part of something real. The revenge I got wasn't dramatic. It was quieter, more profound. It was the revenge of living well, of building a life that proved I had always been worthy. So that's my story. The story of how I discovered my mother had been stealing from me for years, and how I finally got justice. If this resonated with you, please leave a comment below sharing your experience. Have you ever been the invisible child in your family? Have you ever had to fight for what was rightfully yours? I want to hear from you. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, you are worthy of love, respect, and everything good in life, no matter what anyone has told you. I'll see you in the next video.